chess, nonsense, and analysis. Hi, dear viewer. Yeah, once again, here we are. We are still talking about, calculation, and I'm trying to help you improve your calculation skills. Uh, our first video on the series, we basically looked at candidate moves, and we looked at candidate moves in a straight sort of variation without many branches, right? Um, and that went well. So in this one, we are going to have a look at, because this also happens, and it actually is very important for, especially when you have an advantage and you are trying to find the right way to attack. You need to be very creative. And um, yeah, this is not necessarily spoken about in the books, so it becomes very difficult for many players to know, well, how? I know I need to be creative, but how? In which way? And this is what we're going to address today. So we're going to look at a very beautiful combination that happened in a game from 1954. It was played in the Soviet Union between Kopayev and Novopashin. And this one deals with patterns. So a pattern, remember what a pattern is? A pattern is a hanging piece, a possibility of a fork, back rank mate, open check, pin that can be exploited, right? Discover attack, double attack. All these are patterns. Now, when you spot a pattern, remember we're calling it a pattern because it may just be two pieces that are on the same color. And sometimes you're not able to immediately take advantage of this, but you can work around it. So I'll only be able to explain it better if we go into the variation, into the example. Let's go into it. So here we are. This is the critical position, and it's black to play. So the first thing that we have to do is split the whole board into all these hidden patterns that we're going to use in order to calculate and attack. Let's go. So what do we see? Now, we are looking, this is very important. When you're looking at the patterns, don't worry how you want to take advantage of them. That will sort itself out. It's just important for you to see them. So the first pattern that is there is that the queen and the rook are on the same color. The queen and rook are both on the white squares, which means that if our knight were to get to d4, our knight would then be forking these pieces. Okay, all good. What else are we seeing? We are seeing that the king, there are 3 pawns in front of the king. And generally speaking, whenever you have 3 pawns on the king, then the back rank is quite weak, and this can be used. So we see a second pattern. We can use the fact that there is a back rank that at the moment is not necessarily defended, and maybe in one variation or the other, we would maybe be able to get a chance to use this pattern. What else do we see? There is, because the pawn is on f5, there is a possibility in some variations. We don't really need to squeeze all the juice out of the position here. There is a possibility of a pin, of the queen pinning the pawn, but it will require some, remember we're being creative here. It will require black playing the move f4 to maybe remove the bishop in one variation or the other. No? Okay, what else? So these are basically the patterns that we are seeing, and these are the patterns that we're going to use to further launch our idea. So 2 big ideas, back rank mate, and next idea is the queen and the rook, a fork possibility, and the possibility of a pin. So now we start to say, well, what are our candid moves? What candid moves can we have? Can we, get going so that we can move forward? So what I'm going to do here is advise you to stop the video and find the first candid move that would, you know, unlock the position. All right. So yeah, I hope you managed to find it. So the first candid move that unlocks the position is actually working on both these candid moves we talked about, and that is pawn to d3. Pawn to d3 is a very powerful move because, well, what are we looking for? If pawn takes pawn, we will play knight to d4. After which we're going to be able to win. Yes, it will take a bit of time, but technically we'll be able to clean up rook and queen and rook against queen and bishop. We'll win that position. Which means now that the opponent's got two options. The opponent can take with the queen, or the opponent can move back with the rook. Logical. Let's go with the one that where the opponent moves back with the rook. Well, of course, a kind of move here, pawn takes pawn. Just like in the first example we looked at, now we're starting to understand a certain pattern emerging. This should help you also in your games. When pawns can get to a position where they can queen, they obviously become very powerful pattern makers, so to speak, because there'll always be a threat of pushing this pawn and queening and so on and so on. Like for example here, we want to simply support this pawn, knight d4, rook c8, things like this, and that's just queen. So the question then becomes, well, what should white play? How should white respond, you know, to this pawn? Well, a logical move for white to play here is queen d3, because queen d3 stops knight d4, right? This is basically, there are other kind of moves you can look at rooks one, but the strongest one is queen d3 in this particular variation, because it does stop knight to d4. So what are we having here? We're having now all of a sudden a situation where our pawn is attacked and danger. For example, if we play rook d8, this is a nothing move. The opponent will just simply grab the pawn, queen takes c2. What shall we do? Well, the pawn can move to c1. Remember we talked about this? And queen. But who's defending? Now we shift our attention to the pattern. What is the pattern here? The pattern that we are dealing with at the moment is the back rank, because there's only one piece that is really adequately trying to defend the back rank, and that is the rook. So rook e8 suggests itself. It should be, remember we always talked about the most forcing moves. We're looking for the forcing moves. I cannot take with check. I cannot check, but I can definitely attack the rook. And why is it important for me to attack the rook? Because my rook on a8 is not in the game. So the rook on a8 is, so to speak, not alive, right? The rook on a8 is dead, not playing. So that is why our idea is, why don't we play rook to e8, like so? Because we know for a fact that if we play rook to e8, our opponent is not able to take the rook because we queen. So what is the move that white must play? Possibly rook c1, right? I mean, what else should white do? Now white is threatening the pawn on c2 with the queen. We want to not to allow queen takes c2. So what do you guys think? What should be the kind of move in this position? There are a number of kind of moves, rather. Let's rather say what is the strongest move. I need to keep my pawn on c2, because if I don't keep my pawn on c2, then we are slowly going to move towards equality. Now, look at this. There's an X-ray with the queen. The queen is sitting on this diagonal, and there are possibilities of the queen to be able to defend the pawn. So I guess a kind of move should be f4. f4 is played. And now, queen takes queen, king takes queen, bishop takes f4. Now, remember, when the pieces move to certain positions, you need to be aware of the new patterns that can emerge. What are the patterns in this position? Well, we see three pieces. Okay, before I actually tell you, I should have let you find it yourself, right? Maybe you can pause the video here, try to find it yourself. Yeah, so that we can interact. Yeah, did you manage? Great. So the three pieces are the important pattern. The king is on a black square on G1. Let's highlight it. The rook on C1 is also on a black square, and so is the bishop on F4. And don't forget, the back rank is also there. So now when these pieces are sitting like this, they're sitting pretty for only one piece, and that is the knight. So knight d4 is actually not even a pattern, is just the strongest move in the position. And that's it. In this position, white can resign. Yeah, the knight is coming to E2 with check, and pieces are hanging, and this is it. So let's go back now to our initial position. Remember, we started here. We said we noticed the patterns, the queen and the rook. We noticed the back rank mate. We noticed the possibility of playing F4 and creating a pin on the G file. We then went with D3. So the first variation was rook E1. We sorted that out. Okay, c takes d3 is not a try because knight d4. So it must be queen takes d3, right? Let's go into it. Queen takes d3. So after queen takes d3, the question becomes, well, what are our candidate moves here? So our candidate moves have to be linked with the patterns that are there on the board. And as we said, the back rank is a very important pattern in the position. So a move that suggests itself is rook d8, right? It just suggests itself because you attack the queen and you are thinking of playing rook d1, checkmate. Forcing, and you are forcing now the opponent to do what? You are forcing the opponent to find a way to play rook e1. That means the opponent must play queen e3 or queen c3. These are the moves that the opponent must play. Otherwise, the opponent is not going to be able to play rook e1 once the rook lands on d1. So queen e1, excuse me, queen e3 or queen c3. Let's start with queen e3. Now, queen e3 as some kind of a defensive try. And now the question becomes, what should we play? Well, the queen, by the way, lands on a black square, and we know that if the rook goes to e1, it would be also on a black square. So then I guess the move to be played is knight d4, right? Knight d4. So this one is different from the first example in that we are now using patterns to find the candidate. And the candidates we're finding, notice, we're finding just one move because of the patterns. The patterns help us to find the move. That is the point. The patterns themselves are the ones that are helping us find the most critical candidate move, right? All right. So the knight moves to d4. And now the big question is, what should white play? Any ideas what white should play? So maybe you could pause the video here again, have a look, and then decide what the candidate moves are and calculate further. Look for patterns, please, and then try to see what can happen. All right. Did you find them? So two candidates, right? Rook e1 or rook d2. Okay. Let's start first with rook d2, possibly. Yeah? Rook d2 is played. Now, once rook d2 is played, we need we need patterns again to help us move along. But at the moment, the patterns are not really patterning, if that should be a word. They're not really working for us. But the back rank is there, so possibly rook e8 should do the trick right here. Rook e8, and the opponent, if the opponent moves the queen, we check. So the opponent should play bishop e5 is the only move And please pause again the video and try to find the solution. Right. So I hope you found it. It's that one we're talking about, dear viewer. Do you realize that the once the bishop is moved, the pawn is pinned, right? And once again, the king is on a black square. Excuse me, yes. And the bishop, the white king, that is, the white king is on a black square, and the bishop is on a black square as well. So what do we want? We want to play rook takes bishop. And if queen takes bishop, knight f3 check. So we created a pattern, and that would be that. So we are done with queen e3. So then we are left with queen going to c3. So the queen on c3 is now in a position to defend against rook d1. Because if rook d1 check, immediately we shall play rook e1. And I mean, we'll be doing quite fine there. So now, once again, the patterns are running out for us, but we see something. If I play rook d1 check, rook e1, again, the rook gets to the black square. And let's say I take, queen takes, the queen and the king would be sitting pretty because we'd have the king and the queen there. And man, if our knight could only then move over to f3 without the bishop being there, of course, being very creative, that would be quite nice. So how do we set this up? Please, maybe you can stop the video here again. I know I'm making work hard, but hey, you gotta work a little bit to improve. So stop the video here and then try to calculate the variations and see what you come up with, right? All right, did you do that? So the move is what? The move is f4. We open up that um, the, the pattern for the queen, so to say, to speak, right? We open up the pattern for the queen. So bishop takes f4. And now once the bishop takes on f4, you also notice that the two pieces are hanging. The rook is hanging as well as the bishop. So queen g4. You see, we're not really looking for candidates. This is a very interesting way. When we find patterns, we're not looking for candidates. The patterns themselves give us the move that should be played. So in this position, what do you think, dear viewer, white should play? It's quite difficult. For example, if queen e3, but the queen is overloaded because it's helping the rook, we shall take queen takes f4. And that will be that. So, well, I guess the opponent must play possibly bishop takes h6 as a try. And yeah, because at least you cannot take the rook because I take on g7, right? And the argument that the opponent is having is that, okay, look, if you take the bishop, I at least look, you have 6 points, knight and 3 pawns. I have 6 pawns. So I could try to maybe salvage a draw somehow. But we don't let them. Now, what is happening? The back rank is also still very weak, so we go in. Rook d1 check. The rook must come to e1. But now, do you see the pattern that has emerged? We see the king and the rook, and the pattern is the one that we've been talking about on f3, but there's a new one. Look at here, the king on g1 and the queen on c3, which means what? Which means that we would love to have the knight on e2, right? So right here, we play knight to d4. So we are threatening knight e2. Knight e2 check, and then we take the queen. So let's say the opponent plays h3 because they want to get rid of the back rank problem, right? They want to get rid of the back rank problem. So what do we do here is the important question. We need to control this h2 square so that the king is not able to move. So we have a very forcing move here, which is knight f3. So calculate variations that happen after knight f3. Please pause the video, calculate what happens after knight f3. All right, you've done that. Excellent. Let's continue. So knight f3 check. So, well, in this position, if the king moves to h1, we can just take queen e1. Take, queen takes, knight takes. They take our queen, we take their bishop. This time we're just winning. So the only thing that is left is king f1, right? It's the only move that we've made. But now, what do you notice as a pattern? Well, the knight and the rook are both attacking e1, and the queen is defending. So once again, a forcing move. Can I take with check? Can I check? Well, I cannot take with. I can take with check. Rook takes e1, but the opponent plays queen takes e1. And if I take the queen, my queen is also hanging. But there is another check. Can you see it? Excellent. Queen c4 check. Very, very strong move. And after this move, of course, white is completely lost because white takes on c4 and rook takes e1 is checkmate. So yeah, one that is full of variations, but we see now the difference in terms of the difference between the first one that I showed you and this one. In this one, the candidates were based on the patterns on the board. The patterns were created by where the pieces are. So that type of creativity you need to be able to see through the piece and say, wait, if I play this and they take here, there's a pattern and I can do this and that. These are very, very beautiful. And I'll be presenting you with some less difficult, but yeah, more like that. So remember what I was saying to you guys. I'm going to give you all the different types of tactical exercises that you have to be competent in, right? Your skill levels have to be good to be able to solve that. Right. So that's it for today. We'll meet again. I hope you have enjoyed this. And yeah. So till next time, for now, all I can say is, oh, checkmate.